Welcome to the Midcoast Community Council meeting for April 12, 2017. Will the council members please introduce themselves?
Dan Haggerty.
Laura Stein.
Claire Tuton.
Lisa Ketchum.
Dave Wilson.
Brandon Quan.
And Chris Johnson won't be here tonight. The first item on our agenda is the Board of Supervisors report. Ellie Dahlman.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellie Dahlman. I'm here on behalf of Supervisor Horsley's office to provide a few brief updates. The first item I'd like to point out is the San Mateo County Youth Commission recruitment is currently open. So if you know any youth between the ages of 13 to 20 who attend school or live in San Mateo County, applications are due no later than May 26th. So there's more information on the county's website, and then I'll leave the flyer here also. The second item I have for you is regarding the short-term rental ordinance for the coast side. Once the ordinance is in place, it would permit short-term rentals, which are residential properties rented for periods of 30 days or less, such as VRBO and Airbnb or HomeAway. Last month, the ordinance was approved by the Planning Commission, and the ordinance is expected to come before the Board of Supervisors as a next step on May 16th, before it goes to the California Coastal Commission for final review before it's set in place. But there's more information available online for any of you who are less familiar with the ordinance. We have a few drafts and contact information there. The next two items are related to transportation projects along Highway 1. The first is Gray Whale Cove, which is looking at adding a crosswalk from the parking lot on the east side of Highway 1, crossing to the west side of Highway 1 with some flashing beacons. It would also kind of formalize the entrance to the parking lot. The consultant is currently in conversations with PG&E to figure out where the best, what the best way to get power to the flashing beacons would be. The project's currently in the design phase, so I'll be sure to continue to provide updates as we move forward. One recent update on that, I believe last week, the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, who is funding the project, approved to allocate the remainder of the funding that had been allocated for the preliminary planning study, which included Gray Whale Cove. Essentially, they've allocated the remaining funding all towards Gray Whale Cove to fund the design and as much of the construction as possible. It looks like we still will need to find a bit of additional construction funding depending on how complicated getting the power and other things might be, but we are moving forward with that project. The second transportation project is the multimodal or parallel trail project. We're working currently on segment 1, which would be a bicycle and pedestrian trail, ideally connecting from the Naomi Patridge Trail in Half Moon Bay, traveling north to Coronado intersection. You may have recently seen workers out surveying the area. They're gathering additional information on the lay of the land that will be used to prepare the more detailed designs that will be used to construct the trail, which are the same designs that you all provided feedback on. They're just adding additional detail to those. And at this point, the design documents, as I mentioned, are underway, and we're looking at construction ready, hopefully early 2018. So I'll keep you all in the loop as we move forward on that. The next item is related to the AmeriGas propane facility. This was an agenda item, I can't recall how many meetings ago with your council, but I did want to just let you know that AmeriGas is working with the planning department to come into compliance. The fire department as well as building inspectors are monitoring the site and working with AmeriGas. And the company has also agreed to remove all of the storage tanks that are currently on the property. So they are in the process of doing that, and I'll continue to provide updates as they're available as they move through the process. And the last item I have for you is regarding the Princeton Street End project at the end of Broadway Street. the draft Plan Princeton document, for those of you who are not familiar with the project, designates the end of Broadway right at the waterfront as a lookout point. And so I just wanted to let you know that we have an updated kind of informational sign draft that your council reviewed a couple months ago. But the minor changes that we have are the more simple font as requested, as well as a solid light colored background. So this is a draft that we have at this point. And Public Works is working with the Parks Department to figure out if the wooden benches, similar to Maury Point, the ones that were at Maury Point that you all pointed out, would be possible to construct there. So they are looking into that, and I'll, like I mentioned, bring more details as they're available. But it looks like the next step in the process is to get a CDP for the project. Once we have that, Public Works estimates construction would be maybe no more than a week to put 2 benches, 1 informational sign, and then move the guardrail from the very end of the street, just far enough back to allow space for the 2 benches and the sign. And that's all I have.
Any update on the weekend shuttle?
It is running. I know I believe it started earlier this year during probably one of the most rainy months, or one of the months with the most rain on the weekends. But it's I believe, as far as I know, it's running Saturdays and Sundays, doing a loop. We have more information up on Supervisor Horsley's website, but I can come back to your next meeting with a bit more detail around ridership, maybe.
Yeah, that would be good. I've seen it advertised on the radio and on the newspaper and a couple places, but most people I talk to are totally unaware of it. And when they hear about it, they think it's necessary but insufficient. So I'm just really hoping that we can get the word out as much as possible so that people really do start using it.
Yeah. If you have any suggestions about additional ways to spread the word, I know that, as you mentioned, there's been a number of ads in the Half Moon Bay Review and the radio. But if there's anything else that you think would be effective, do send me an email. I'll pass it on to Chris.
Will there be any changes to the shuttle, like in days such as the Dream Machine coming up? You know, there's going to be like lots of traffic. I don't know and I know that there might be some police, you know, like directing, you know, some of the flows. So will there be any special changes or not?
I am not aware of any special event schedules, but again, I can follow up with Chris Hunter in Supervisor Horsley's office to see kind of if they've thought about what they might do on special event days when there'll be extra heavy traffic.
Thank you.
So the Broadway street end, is that gonna, can you thank the guys for looking into the rustic bench? That we appreciate that. And also for the propane yard, will there be a CDP? Will they be getting that?
Yeah, my understanding is that they do have to apply to the planning department to get a CDP. I think the focus right now is to remove the the storage tanks that are currently there. I believe they're interested in keeping kind of a fence and adding some kind of foliage to as a visual block between the Pillar Ridge community and the AmeriGas facility. And then also I think they have to get the CDP for the gravel that they currently have inside on their property. But yes, so there will be a CDP process. I believe they have yet to submit an application. Currently the focus is on coming into compliance with fire and with the storage tanks.
Should I talk to Summer directly, or can I have a thought here about a bus shelter. We would like to have a bus shelter, but our property is very limited there, Pillar Ridge, and if there could be a bus shelter right at the corner of the propane yard, if they would allow that, that would be so cool. Just have to move the fence, jog around it, you know? Because the sidewalk is too narrow to put it in the right of way.
Where's the nearest bus shelter there? Is there one?
There aren't any bus shelters.
Okay.
No bus shelters. There's a
Bus stop,
but no
excuse me,
shelter.
yeah,
The
that's
bus
what
stop
I
is
meant.
right there at the entrance to Pillar
Okay.
Ridge.
There's bus shelters in Pacific. There's one at Sea Haven.
Yeah, I would suggest, you could follow up directly with Summer, but I'm
Okay,
happy
I'll do
to,
that.
also check, copy me and I'll stay in the loop as well.
Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, on the beach shuttle, I was behind one of the shuttles on the weekend, and it's just labeled as the commute.org. It's just like very, kind of and I understand, it's just, you're just using a bus from another area, but you probably don't want to paint the sides, but maybe you could have some type of signage that could be removable from the windows on the side, just to let people know it is a beach shuttle and not just a generic county bus driving around.
For prisoners.
And with the Graywell Cove, changes up there, has there ever been any type of a impact study that's viewable to the public?
So in terms of the Graywell Cove project, to my knowledge, the only study that was done would be the preliminary planning study that looked at a number of intersections from starting Graywell Cove at the north end south.
Right, but my concern is the specific impact that it will have to all of the coastside residents.
Well, part of the planning, permitting, and design process will incorporate a CEQA, some sort of CEQA document. So that will look at the impacts to,
So we'll have to wait for that.
yeah.
Claire, do you have your hand up?
No,
Oh, and one more thing about the bus shelter, just to clarify, Pillar Ridge would pay for the shelter, we just don't have a place to put it.
Okay.
Anybody in the audience have a question for Ellie?
I have a comment. Catherine Slater Carter, there's actually quite a bit of road right-of-way on either side of that road. My guess is.
Not on the west side, it's the sidewalk and that's it.
Just the sidewalk?
Yeah.
So the road is hard up on the
There's
west
40
side?
foot right away.
Okay. Too bad,
Yeah.
unless you put it on the east side.
Okay, thanks Ellie.
Great.
Any other government officials? Harvey?
I won't take too much of your time, but I thought you should know what the city council's highest priorities for the next year from Half Moon Bay are, briefly. We think that we would like to develop an affordable housing strategy. Just heard about the county having accessory dwelling unit measure that's going to come about. We need to talk about that. We need to reduce the constraints and our land use plan and zoning updates to address this. This is our number one priority, affordable housing. We'd like to develop a plan to regulate and tax marijuana. That has overwhelmingly won support in every place on the coast side, including Half Moon Bay. We would like to develop a response to homelessness. It's another serious problem. We're going to start by removing the encampments, which doesn't sound exactly like a beginning, but it's important for the environment. But we need to address grant funding and help any way we can with aiding the homeless people. We'd also like to initiate planning for a new or renovated community-wide park. In the past, I know that Midcoast has had an interest in using our parks, and we would like to cooperate more. And if I get my way, we're going to have a large, low-impact community park that will be available to the entire coastside. And fifth item that is on our priority list is to expand the transient occupancy tax so that we will collect it from short-term rentals. Right now, it should be collected, but it isn't, and it's like a no-brainer to get more revenue for the city. So that's what we're going to be doing. Any questions?
Not all those hotels.
Any questions for Harvey? Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
Next item on the agenda is public comment and announcements. Does anyone in the public have something to say on an item not on our agenda tonight? Do council members have any announcements?
I will mention along the line of transit that was discussed, there is a Samtrans meeting at the Half Moon Bay Brewery tomorrow night under their Brews and Views programs. So if you're interested in transit, you should be attending that. Is it next week? Am I off by a week?
It's next Tuesday at 6:30, no, it's next Tuesday at 6 to 8 p.m., Brews and Views.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have another item also. So the San Mateo County Draft Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment is now available for review and comment by May 5th. The document will guide the county and its cities in understanding and preparing for sea level rise. It includes detailed case studies of Midcoast assets at risk, including Marauder Road, Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and Highway 1 at Surface Beach. You can find links to the full report and upcoming events on the MCC website on the homepage. There's a public workshop Saturday, April 29 at 10:30 to 12:30. It's the Ted Adcock Community Center in Half Moon Bay. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have one item, the minutes for March 22. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Approved unanimously. Okay, the first item on our regular agenda is Seton Coastside Hospital update, and we have Seton CEO John Farrelly here to speak to us.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening. I bring gifts, updates from the first year report from the hospital. I'd like to pass those out.
No cookies.
Just a very brief update of what's gone on at the hospital over the last approximately year and a half. I'm going to start back in December of 2015 when the Daughters of Charity transferred the assets of Seton Coastside, and a couple of other properties to a newly formed not-for-profit company called Verity Health System. Newly compromised board and everything. At the same time they did that, they signed a management agreement with a new company called Verity Health System, with Integrity Health System, to help manage the assets and to grow and develop the hospitals. As you may remember, the Attorney General had to weigh in on that transfer, and she came up with a number of conditions. Among those conditions were that we had to maintain certain services. So for example, at Coastside, we had to continue to operate 116 skilled nursing beds. We had to continue to operate the emergency room. At Seton, we had to continue to operate the emergency room. We had to continue to operate the subacute beds and a number of other services. So there were conditions imposed upon the ongoing operations of the facilities. In addition, she also weighed in and said that we had to perform certain amounts of charity care and community benefit. Charity care being free care provided to people who have no ability to pay, and that was in the amount of approximately $2 million a year. The community benefit standard was that we would have to reinvest in the community certain services and certain efforts. That was about $1 million a year. And in the event that we failed to meet those two thresholds, then we had to take the difference between the monies that were required and what we spent and reinvest those in the hospital, and also to reinvest those in the pension plan to make sure that the employees' pensions were held whole. So we went through that exercise, and we've been up and running for about a year and a half now, and the annual report shows you some of the things that we've accomplished in terms of meeting the conditions imposed by the Attorney General. Now, other things that we've done include a reformulation of the board that oversees Seton and Seton Coastside. So we now have a locally based governing board, so the daughters stepped off. The board is about 60% community members and about 40% physicians. The Attorney General also required a new board called the Local Governing Board, and that's a group of people that are, she actually defined who those people should be by responsibility, and they have to oversee our compliance with the conditions that the Attorney General imposed. And anytime we want to add a service or change a service, the Local Governing Board has to be involved. We've also spent a lot of time recruiting new leaders to come into the hospital. And so in addition to me being new, we have a new chief financial officer, a new chief medical officer, a new chief nursing officer, human resources, quality. So a lot of the senior leadership has changed. And then also a number of managers and directors have changed. And I'm happy to report that as of today, we hired a new full-time director for the Coastside facility. I can't give you her name just yet because she hasn't notified her current employer, but a very seasoned nursing home administrator who will be joining us in early May and devote her full resources to running Seton Coastside. Now, we've also spent a lot of time working on physician recruitment. When the hospital was up for sale, there was so much uncertainty about whether or not we could continue. Many of the physicians left and went to other hospitals. And so we spent a large effort trying to re-recruit physicians to come back to the hospital. And we've also gone out and recruited new physicians. So a lot of primary care physicians, orthopedic spine surgeons, orthopedic joint surgeons, neurosurgeons, neurologists, pulmonologists, infectious disease physicians, the whole gamut from primary care all the way into the subspecialists. And we've added, in the last year, we've probably added about 57 physicians to the medical staff. So very excited about that. We go to the next slide. And we've also been working on program development. Now the daughters, because of the financial pressures on the hospital, closed a number of programs, one of which was an infusion center, which would allow patients who have cancer or other types of diseases to come to the hospital and receive kind of long-term care. So infusion could last anywhere from an hour to 8 hours. And they closed that unit, so we reopened it, and we're very excited to say it's doing very, very well. We also took advantage of the fact that St. Mary's closed their wound care program. Take advantage of the fact that St. Mary's closed their wound care program, and we were able to pull about 60% of those patients over to Seton. Now, Seton's had a long-standing wound care program. It's been running for probably 25 years. We also want to expand that program to include something called hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And I don't know if you know what that is, but these are long, kind of clear cylinders, and we actually literally put a patient into the cylinder and then infuse high-pressure oxygen. And the oxygen gets deep into the tissue and really helps promote healing. And so it's an alternative way from surgery to treat patients who have diabetic wounds or other wounds that won't heal. And then lastly, we're going to add a surgical component to it also. So the patients will be able to receive all types of wound care in one location. And then we're also excited, you may have seen some of our ads on TV and in the local newspapers about a new robotic therapy that we're providing for orthopedic patients, for initially just for knees. But with orthopedic surgery, what really makes the implant successful is the ability to mimic exactly the way the bone is structured. And the robot allows us to be more precise in our placement of the implant. And so we have better outcomes and faster recoveries. And so we recruited an orthopedic surgeon to come in and do that. So we've invested pretty significantly in that as well. In addition, we're working on other programs. The daughters closed the psychiatric unit, which again may have been a good decision 5 or 6 years ago, but is not a good decision today because there are no psychiatric beds for the geriatric population in San Mateo County. And so we're partnering with the health plan of San Mateo to reopen that unit. There's also a critical shortage of skilled nursing beds, and Seton Coastside is one of the few nursing homes that really caters to the Medicaid population. So again, we're working with the health plan of San Mateo to reopen 39 skilled nursing beds. We're working on a retail pharmacy because the pharmacy that was on campus closed, and we think that's an important consideration for patients who are being discharged, as well as for all the patients who are on campus seeing physicians. And then lastly, and one of the things I'm really excited about is the opportunity to create a freestanding rehabilitation hospital on campus. You know, we have so much property that we could take and devote maybe 4 or 5 acres to a 60-bed rehab hospital. And this would be for patients who've had a brain injury or maybe a stroke, or in some cases, joint replacements or a hip replacement or something. So it's a place for patients to go other than a nursing home for concentrated rehabilitation and then discharge out into the community. And we're trying to partner probably with UCSF on that. And while I'm talking about UCSF, let me also tell you, we're working with them on a couple of different programs, one of which would be an expansion to our open heart surgery program. Another would be an expansion of an interventional cardiac program called ablation and electrophysiology. They're also interested in a partnership with Seton Coastside for them, an opportunity to discharge their patients to Coastside. And then lastly, the possibility of reopening our OB program. Now, that's a little bit more of a long shot, but we do think that there's an opportunity to reopen and provide OB services at the facility. Next page. Okay, and then I'll expand on this a little bit. So we, as you know, are the largest provider of services to the health plan of San Mateo outside the county hospital. That's a good relationship for us. It's a great relationship for the health plan. And so we're continuing to try and expand our partnership with them and be able to continue to provide services to those patients who can't really afford to do it on their own. The other health plans like Brown and Tolan and Canopy and Hill, all very interested in Seton. Now that they're comfortable that we are sustainable and will continue to operate into the future, the other health plans are interested in partnering with us. And so we think in very short order we'll be able to continue to provide primary care services and also all the specialty services to Brown and Tolan and Hill patients and things like that. Now let me talk just briefly about COSI because I know that's probably more important to you than anything. I'll tell you that financially, I'm going to skip the last slide if that's okay.
Sure.
Financially, the hospital continues to struggle a little bit, but I will tell you that year-over-year performance is dramatically better than it was the year before we took over. COSI has had a more dramatic improvement, and we've been able to take the hospital, and while not every month, but most months we've been able to put the hospital into the black. And it's come from a couple of different things. One is we've increased the census from about the mid to high 80s up into the high 110s. And so we're pretty much full every day. We've also had some good luck in replacing the skill mix. So it's not 100% Medi-Cal now. It also has some Medicare and Kaiser and other insurance patients. And then we've done a little bit better job of managing expenses in the facility. So all in all, the turnaround at COSI has been more dramatic. We're very excited about hiring a full-time administrator. We do have a full-time director of nursing there. And we're being a little bit more selective about the people that we're hiring to help run the facility. We do believe that longer term, COSI represents a great opportunity to provide primary care services and also more specialty care services. And so maybe a half a day a week or 2.5 days a week we'll have cardiology coverage or gastroenterology coverage or pulmonology coverage. And so that way you won't have to go up the road and over to Seton to get your care. You'll be able to get it more locally. So that's a little bit longer term plan, but we recognize the opportunity to do that. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
As you mentioned, we're really much more interested in Coast Side than in the Daly City campus. And I was thinking about what do we, as a community, look for Seton Coast Side to do. I think one of them is to provide nursing beds for people here from the coast side to make sure that you have priorities maybe for people that actually live here and have families here. The other thing, I'd be interested to hear also what kind of community services or outreach you're prepared to offer for the coast. I'm really enthusiastic about you having some specialty care available down here because that would be a great help for a lot of people. And the ER, people constantly mention that with the traffic being what it is here, that we need to have some sort of dependable services, and that Seton Coast Side is probably our best bet, and we need to work with the hospital to make sure that that's appropriate and available for us. So these are the things that I'm thinking about,
Okay.
so if you want to address any.
Yeah, so let me see if I can repeat answers back to all of those. First of all, my belief is that while there may not be a bed immediately available at Seton for somebody who wants to go, at COSI, for somebody who wants to go there, we have enough turnover that there should always be within a day or two the ability to bring somebody in who wants to come there. And I'm excited to think that the local people would like to get their rehabilitation care there. We'll make that commitment to you. In terms of community involvement, we really haven't done a very good job of that. I'll be the first to admit it. Tina Ann and I have spent a lot of time doing things like this and meeting with our elected officials and trying to get to know the lay of the land. But when Seton was in its financial distress, it really did pull back from community involvement. With the hiring of a full-time administrator and a full-time director of nursing, I think you'll start to see a lot more involvement of the COSI staff in the community. The third one was the emergency room, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. So, one of the conditions imposed by the Attorney General was that we continue to operate the emergency room at COSI for 10 years. So that's not going to change. But I will tell you that as an administrator, I have concerns about the community's ability to differentiate true emergency care from urgent care. And we have had some situations where patients have gone to COSIDE in significant distress, where they probably would have been better off to have gone to Seton or to a full-service hospital. And so I do have a little bit of concern about that. In my perfect world, I'd like to see COSIDE become an urgent care center. Now, I don't have the ability to do that. That's up to the Attorney General. But I think that we could provide a better service as maybe a 12 or a 14-hour urgent care center, supplanted with the specialists who would come down, than we are as a freestanding emergency room.
I think we need 24-hour service, but I agree urgent care would probably be appropriate.
Yeah. What's interesting is if you look at the curve of patients coming into the facility, we get virtually no business after 10 o'clock at night. All of the business that comes into the facility, and they only see about 15 patients a day, but the 90% of the patients are within that roughly 14-hour period from 8 in the morning until 10 at night.
The other thing, I don't take too much time on this, but the other thing that I think the community has values at Seton COSIDE is the physical therapy and rehab services. And I think at one point they were no longer providing some of the rehab services to the community.
Yeah, in fact, thanks for reminding me, that's great. So about a month or a month and a half ago, we contracted with a vendor that provides OT, PT, and speech therapy primarily to nursing homes. And so they now are engaged and are back to providing that service. So I believe we have about 5 FTEs that are providing those services. Yeah.
Any other questions for John?
Please, so you are licensed as a 24-hour emergency room
So that
where an ER specialist is on the campus
Yeah,
at all times?
So that's a very interesting question. The answer to the question is no, that it's licensed as what's called a standby emergency room, which does not require a physician there 24 hours a day. But what we have been providing in the last year and a half and well before that is a physician on site 24 hours a day.
That's ER board certified.
Not necessarily board certified, not necessarily ER trained, in some cases family practice, but all board certified, yes. Yeah, it's not uncommon for physicians practicing in smaller emergency rooms to be board certified in family medicine and not necessarily emergency medicine.
So I believe you used to have a contract with California Emergency Physician Group, so that is no longer in place?
No, CEP is still our provider there, yes.
And they would provide you with family physicians, not ER physicians?
So again, it just depends. In some cases, what we experience with CEP is in some cases, the smaller, less busy, less acute emergency rooms are not attractive to physicians who have trained in emergency medicine. And so while that is always our first preference and their first preference, sometimes they're just not available. But at least there is a trained and competent physician there 24 hours a day.
Catherine?
One of the things I think of with an aging population on the coast that would probably be utilized would be to have a dialysis center. I see them all up and down El Camino, and yet I don't think we have one on the coast, and I'm willing to bet we have 1 or 2 diabetics who need dialysis, so.
Okay, so I promise people that I did not put her up to that. But believe it or not, it's also one of the things I failed to mention. I'm not sure if it was on the slide, but we do believe that there is an opportunity to put a dialysis unit at COSIDE. And when we spoke to the health plan of San Mateo about it, they were very, very interested, because it's a bad combination of nursing home patients who require dialysis. There are virtually no nursing homes I think the only one is one being constructed in East Bay, but there are no nursing homes in the greater Bay Area that provide dialysis services, so we are looking at it. Tell everybody I didn't put you up to that, okay?
Sabrina?
Thank you. Quick question, and thanks for being here. So, in communicating out to the public about what type of situation is appropriate for getting medical care at Seton Coastside, how might you do a better job of communicating that message so that people don't go to the wrong place? Is there a way that, is there, like, what, how do you categorize the type of?
That's a great question. And it's a question that I don't think we've thought about before. I'm looking at Tina because Tina helps with business development and marketing communications. I think that's a really good idea, is to create some vehicle by which we can help to explain to the community when they should consider, and I have to be a little careful about that because technically we are licensed as an emergency room. But maybe there's a way that we can do that with the cooperation and approval of the Attorney General to create a tool like that. I like that idea.
And how do the emergency responders, like if a surfer is drowning, how do the emergency responders decide which place? I mean, you know, the public needs to know, but also
Sure.
the emergency.
So again, another great question. So the paramedics have broad discretion to take patients to the most appropriate place. So for example, if you were having a heart attack, if you were suffering from a stroke, the ambulance providers will only go to STEMI receiving centers or stroke receiving centers. So they already have the ability to differentiate. And I'm fairly certain that they use that differentiation down here as well. So if it's critical or if it's a true emergency, they will go to Coastside. But if they feel that the patient is stable enough, they will move that patient up to Seton.
If it's a true emergency, you said they would go to Coastside.
Well, again, criticality requires more immediate intervention. And so they know that there's a physician and they know that there's trained staff at Coastside. But if they believe that the patient can safely be transported, or if they feel that the service can't be provided safely at Coastside, they will divert that patient to Seton.
Okay, so I think I've noticed in the past one emergency where someone wasn't taken to the right location. We don't need to rehash that whole history. It was pretty well documented, and this was way before you guys were involved. But I do think that there does need more clarity, especially for the public. So just a suggestion.
Okay, I think it's a great idea. Let us follow up on it, okay?
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, we have some extra folding chairs out there, and put them along the wall. Come on up, find a seat. We should be able to accommodate everybody. Our next item is First Flush. Is Brittany here? Are you her? Brittany's going to talk to us about the First Flush water quality results from 2016. She's from the Resource Conservation District. You can put your chairs along the wall over here behind us. Just don't want to block the walkway, is all.
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Brittany. I'm from the Resource Conservation District, and I'm going to give an overview today of our results from the First Flush Water Quality Sampling Program. Or do I have access? Okay. So just really quick, the Resource Conservation District is a special district of the government that's located in Half Moon Bay. And we help private landowners and sometimes public agencies conserve and manage natural resources. And we're almost entirely grant dependent. But we basically provide assistance for anything related to climate, agriculture, wildlife, water, and it's non-regulatory, confidential assistance. So part of our water program is our water quality program, and we do a lot of things within that program. I coordinate that. We do education and outreach. We do water quality monitoring, analyze the data, as well as make recommendations to the community and implement solutions.
chapters?
Oh, there's actually one before that. There we go. The one after this. There we go. Okay. So I just wanted to give some context for the what I'm going to talk about today, because it is one part of some larger initiatives. So it gives, basically the First Flush program gives a snapshot. It's a one-time sampling event, and it gives a snapshot of the water quality at different locations on the coast. So here's a list of our other efforts, just so we kind of understand if we're talking about more focused monitoring like in Pillar Point Harbor, that's a different conversation. Quickly, we focus a lot on bacterial pollution. That's our main pollutant here on the coast. So we do some intensive monitoring for San Pedro Creek and Pacifica State Beach. And on San Vicente Creek, the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and these are all through different agencies that we do this sampling for to meet regulatory requirements often. And then Pillar Point Harbor for the Harbor District, and right now we've been doing an analysis and monitoring for the past year that is focused just on the Capistrano Beach area, and so we're going to be coming out with results and recommendations in June. And we'll be presenting that at their board meeting, the second Wednesday of the month, or the third Wednesday, I mean. And then we also work with individual farms and ranches, doing testing related to food safety. And then we also do a whole bunch of other water quality parameters like metals and nutrients. And we do that with G-Genere on Rancho Corral de Tierra, as well as with Post and Hillside Land Trust at Seymour Ditch and Wave Crest for some of the issues happening there. And then we have 2 citizen science monitoring programs. And that basically means it's a one-time sampling event where we gather volunteers to sort of get a snapshot of what's happening. And so First Flush is one of those, so that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. But if you're interested in volunteering with us, we do have a few volunteers in the room. Let me know. We have Snapshot Day, which comes up in May. So feel free to contact me about that or First Flush next year. So First Flush is the first big rain of the season where you basically have pollutants that have built up on the landscape that get washed off with the first rain. And so they get washed off through the stormwater system, and they come out of the fresh water comes out of these outfalls and discharges to the ocean. So what we try to do is take a sample of that fresh water coming out of those pipes to try to see what's being contributed to the ocean from the land. And we don't just look at bacteria, we look at a whole different suite of parameters like metals and nutrients. And basically our goal is to try to have that one set of data that we can look at year after year and start to identify trends and areas and pollutants that are places that we should focus on. So like I said, it's a citizen science program, so we cannot run this program without volunteers because the first flush happens within a very short amount of time. So we need a bunch of people at like 15 different sites that are going to take samples at the same time. So that's a vital part of our program. So like I said, if anybody wants to volunteer. And this is a program through the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Our funders are the San Mateo Harbor District, as well as Sewer Authority Midcoast. And the San Mateo County Health System donates some time to run some of the samples, and Surfrider offers up their lab space. So we've got a pretty good collaborative partnership going on this program. Here's a list of our sample sites this year. We've done a pretty good job in the past few years, just kind of really trying to get a good representative area of the coast that includes areas in Half Moon Bay that have never been sampled before. Like this was our first year doing Kelly Avenue, and then Arroyo Cañada Verde, this was our second year. That's the drainage by the Ritz, Carlton, and then up into Montera and Moss Beach. And so you can kind of see a map. Our furthest north site is 7th Street, and then our furthest south site is Arroyo Cañada Verde. So, this is just a quick summary of what we saw this year, and then I will tell you guys what we've kind of been seeing over time. At those 14 sites, we compared the data to water quality objectives that are established by the EPA and the Water Board for basically impacts on human health and wildlife. And so we found that all but one of our sites exceeded that threshold for bacteria. So there was a 96% exceedance rate. The only place that didn't cross the threshold was Arroyo Cañada Verde. Everywhere else did. Looking at metals, there was a 57% exceedance rate, 43% for zinc. Lead, we didn't see any detection of lead. Orthophosphate, 71%. So that's our second kind of pollutant to consider after bacteria. And then we weren't actually seeing any nitrate, which is interesting when we were seeing some other nutrients.
What's orthophosphate?
So it's phosphate. So like in detergents and soaps and also fertilizers from farms, usually it's the kind of thing that you typically see with nitrate. So in this case, I would say it's probably less related to fertilizer and it's more related to like soaps and detergents. And those nutrients are the things that cause those harmful algal blooms. So this is looking at our historic sites is what I call them. There's like 8 sites that we've been monitoring since 2008. And so this allows us to really see what, if what we kind of saw in 2016 has been consistent over time. And kind of pointing out the key areas that we're seeing these issues. And this is the first year that I've really felt comfortable doing a summary table like this because we have 8 years of data. So it's like, okay, we can really start pinpointing, even though we're seeing a lot of bacteria problems, which areas are really the worst. And so looking at that, we're really seeing the worst problems for bacteria at Surfers Beach and the Capistrano outfall. And the Surfers Beach is the big outfall that you see coming out of the rocks. Orthophosphate, Surfers Beach, and El Granada. And what we call El Granada is the Burnham Strip ditch next to the skate park. And then the metals, copper and zinc, we're really starting to see over on the other side of the harbor at West Point Avenue in Vassar. And then, some of those other pollutants down there, we aren't really seeing that they're exceeding thresholds. So they're not, really of concern, but those are the areas that we're actually seeing some detection. So that's kind of a summary of where we're at. And I just wanted to kind of put in the graphs for the bacteria and orthophosphate because those are our biggest pollutants of concern. So you can see that red line on the bottom is the objective that we're trying to be underneath. And over 8 years at all of our historic sites, you can see that how far it is over that. There is some variation, there's a lot of factors that can influence those levels, but you can at least see how the sites compare to each other too, and you can see how Capistrano is, for this specific type of bacteria, is consistently high. And then this is the other type of bacteria, and for this one you can see that Surfers South is way up at the maximum detection limit since 2008. Here's orthophosphate. And you can see here, it looks like you can see where we're getting that 70% exceedance rate, but you can kind of tell that that's actually going up pretty significantly over time. Whereas back in 2008, 2009, it was a lot lower. Oh yeah, I guess I put copper in here too. So same with copper, you can kind of see like Vassar is the orange line. That one's has exceeded every single year. It's been over the threshold, and we kind of saw some spikes in 2016. So that's the kind of analysis that we did to kind of put together that summary table. So, next steps. So like I said, this is one of our many programs. And the way that we do these programs is through funding from different sources. So next steps from this program, I believe, are to continue collecting data through the First Flush program, so that we can have this long-term data set and really start visualizing those trends like we were able to do this year. And it's really the one program where you can look at a large amount of sites and a large amount of pollutants to just kind of get a sense of what's happening. It's not very focused. So using the First Flush data allows us to get into the more focused studies. And so using that with other relevant information to start to promote various efforts to actually mitigate this pollution and start implementing, best management practices like education and outreach related to pet waste. We've seen a lot of data pointing to dogs contributing to the bacterial levels. So, that those are kind of the next steps, and it's awesome to be here. This is our first time presenting, so I'm excited about everybody's interest. And the Harbor District results that are going to come out in June are going to have some really awesome recommendations about some concrete steps that we want to take in the future, getting the whole community involved. So, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the larger slide deck that you had on your website,
Mm-hmm.
it mentioned specifically that West Point Avenue has the highest concentration of nitrate in all the counties in the study.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have Romeo Packing Fertilizer Wholesaler right there on Princeton Avenue, and they unload their semis in the street, which flows down to West Point. And has anybody, when you talk about next steps,
Mm-hmm.
do you talk to them about what their practices are? And related to that is, you also said here, West Point and Vassar have issues with this copper, zinc, nitrate, lead. So these two street ends right there, it seems
Mm-hmm.
like it's a relatively small drainage.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that it wouldn't be as challenging there to try and pinpoint where this is coming from. When will we start to work on that aspect of this?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we get this question a lot, and so I think that one thing that's key is to highlight what the, constraints are of the RCD. I would know what to do. I would know what the specific next step would be to address that and go talk to them and start tracing the drainage up and stuff. But when we ask for the funding for the First Flush program, we do only ask to coordinate the volunteers and take the samples and then give the data back to the sanctuary, and then that's kind of where it stops. So if someone were to come in and say, I really care about this drainage, like, let's take the next step and start, go figure out what are the sources here, go talk to that packing company. That would be sort of a separate, like, I call it like a source identification program, which is what we've ended up, which is what we're doing in San Pedro Creek, San Vicente Creek, and Pillar Point Harbor. We're doing a more, and when I say Pillar Point Harbor, I mean Capistrano area. We're doing a very focused study at the request of whoever, is funding it. So
what could we do who do we talk to?
To
and who do we
influence.
encourage to, is this RCD just a different grant source, or, who would do this?
So we could do the actual work, but we would need, and we could, draft a scope of work and a budget and say, okay, based on the demand of the community, this is what we want to do and this is what we're proposing. But we need someone to step up and fund that. And we do keep our eyes open for grants, just like we had a grant in the past for Pillar Point Harbor. I'm always looking for grants that are a good fit to start honing in on these things, so that's always one option. And some of the I thought we were maybe gonna get lucky with some of the Prop 1 funds, but they're very specific about some things. So it wasn't the right fit, but we are always looking for grants for things for where we see a need. But if there's, you know, if that's not happening fast enough, at any time, we're ready to do the work. It's just a matter of, we need funding, whether it comes from our grant or it comes from somewhere else.
Would the county possibly be a source of this funding? I mean, how much money are we talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
It depends what.
20 grand, 50 grand, does
Yeah.
that do anything for
Yeah,
it?
that does a ton,
Oh, well,
yeah.
I mean, that's something that we could talk to Supervisor Worsley about that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. I think it's a matter of like, right now, for the Capistrano area, for example, you know, a lot of people are really wanting to focus in on that area. And so the Harbor District has stepped up and, you know, started contributing like 50,000 a year for us to do an in-depth source analysis of that small drainage area. And that's what we've done the past year. And so our next steps from that, other people like the Yacht Club and other people are starting to come in and say, all right, we're ready to start contributing as well. So if it was something that's already kind of in place, like the mechanism is there. But if it's something like you guys would specifically like to focus on West Point and Vassar, then I could draft something about how much that would cost, and we could go present that to people, you know. But I don't think that there's just I don't just draft like scopes of work for certain areas really unless I'm asked to, just because there's so much,
Yeah.
there's so much area to cover.
Well, we're just advisory to the Board of
Right.
Supervisors, so
Okay.
we're just looking for, so basically what, you know, we could approach the supervisor, but other than that,
Yeah, it's always a hard question a lot of times because of the way that RCD is, the way the organization is run. But, you know, we are more than excited to do any more specific work. And I definitely would know what the next steps are, like you were talking about. It's just a matter of, you know, who's requesting what format am I putting it in, and who are we proposing it to? And I would be happy to do that if that was requested.
any other questions? Sabrina?
Hi. Glad you're here because I know you guys came to the Harbor District meeting recently, to probably give the same presentation, and unfortunately, our chair never allowed you guys to give your presentation, so that was a bummer. But good thing it's here and it's on PCTV, so people are gonna get to see it. With regards to drainage in Princeton, I know that's been a concern because there's so many sort of industrial things happening there, and there's metal and there's all kinds of stuff. And I'm sure that you guys could come up with some creative ways to deal with the drainage problem there. It seems like that's something that if the MCC was really gonna get involved with the county, might be able to get the county to see that that correlates obviously with some of the work that's been done today on Plan Princeton, and that, you know, there's an opportunity to move forward with addressing the drainage problems in Princeton. And it seems like the county would be the right agency to take that on. So I'm just kind of
Yeah, thanks for that.
putting that out there.
Yeah.
And then the next thing I had was, with regard to funding, one of the early slides you showed included the various agencies that are funding things. Are they all funding things, there it is, at the same level, or how does, what could you, I don't even know if you know off the top of your
Yeah,
head.
I do. So this is just for the First Flush program, our funders for this. The slide that I showed before this of all of our programs, there's much more. So this is
Okay.
just for First Flush. The sanctuary, they are the main entity that runs it, so they collect it. They collect the data from us and put it into a larger report for the Central Coast. And they provided some initial training to me to run the program, but they don't contribute funds.
Okay.
You guys, Harbor District and SAM contributes funds, and SAM contributes slightly more than you guys do because of the number of sites, actually maybe twice as more,
Okay.
because of the location of the sites.
Okay.
And then Surfrider just, they contribute lab space and volunteers. And then the health lab contributes the cost for the bacteria samples, which is about $4,000.
Okay. I think that's really helpful for people to understand, you know, the support's coming. I'll try to be really quick here. So the June well, I don't know if it's gonna be a presentation, but you said in June there'll be more information about the work you've been doing for the Harbor District.
Yep.
And that's mainly about Capistrano Beach?
Right.
Okay.
So, the past year, we've been doing focused upstream sampling and integrating historical data from many agencies. So it is gonna be a presentation,
Oh, good.
and we just kind of set that up like today.
Could
So-
that presentation, I'm just throwing this out here for you guys, happen, I sure hope it'll happen at the Harbor District at one of our commission meetings, as long as the chair will allow you guys to speak going forward. But in addition to that, would it be possible to have that presentation possibly here? I'm just kind of putting that out for you guys to think about. You don't have to answer that. But I think since that's the hotbed of pollution, it's really of public interest to understand what the plan is for taking corrective steps and.
Right, exactly, and a lot of what is coming out of that analysis is, you know, set for the first time since the larger study, which was almost 10 years ago now, really using what we learned this year to start putting this stuff out there. Because we have the funding from you guys, we're scoping those ideas and we're saying, okay, we need a hydrology study. Like, we don't know what's happening with the quantity of water that's where it's coming from, how much is there. So kind of vetting that to the community and seeing who kind of wants to step up and start helping, including the county. I'm gonna make some contacts before then too, and just start asking people. I've already started doing that, and things are looking good. So I'm glad that you're here because, yeah, we haven't been able to communicate really. So I'm
Thank
stoked.
you.
Yeah.
And just last thing, I'm sorry it's taking so long. With regard to outreach and education, you know, I know you can't just come up with random estimates for a gazillion projects because you're trying to get the work done that you guys already have funding for. But it seems to me that if the various agencies such as the Harbor District and SAM and the county and maybe Montero Water Sanitary District were all working more collaboratively, that we might be able to partner and come up with funding to help with the public outreach and education program that would encourage people to clean up their pet waste so we wouldn't have the pet waste runoff problem that all dumps into the harbor. So just imagine the harbor is like a cesspool of pet waste if people don't clean up after their animals. And so a lot of people don't realize that. They don't get the connection. They don't know that what's laying in your backyard after rain ends up actually filtering into the harbor. Is that something that you guys have talked about, or?
Yeah, definitely. So as we're doing all of these other initiatives, you know, we're always looking for those opportunities. So for example, because of the work for San Vicente Creek that has come online, we've gotten an agreement with the county to do specific source monitoring, and then they also asked us to do a pet waste thing. And I said, well, does it have to be in that watershed? Can we expand it out? Can we send out those mailers and those educational items? And they said, yes. So I need to confirm, so this is just an example. Using what we have already going in the community to just be like, you guys obviously don't just care about the San Vicente Creek watershed, you also have jurisdiction and responsibility for other areas, so we're already doing the legwork on this, so let's just expand it a little bit, from like Pacifica to Half Moon Bay. So, and then I feel like we've just got a lot of really good players, like Sam has come to us about that as well, doing more education. So I think it's really positive moving forward.
Great, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the Seal Cove update. Camille, could you come sit up here and give your presentation, and then that way if the public has questions, everybody has a microphone.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. See, I know you're all very concerned. I spoke to some of you personally about, I guess, the ongoing issues out there, which dates back to about a year ago. It was actually April. And the county first received a complaint on April 18th that the property owner of 105 San Lucas was carving into the back side of their property, likely constructing a retaining wall to help with likely the landslide issues in that area. So while I think the intention was to build something to help the property, retain itself, it actually caused a lot of harm. And so the county received the complaint on the 18th, and I actually met with the owner at the planning counter on the 22nd and informed them, since we were then in the rainy season, and rainy season goes to the end of April of every year, from October 1st to April. We were very interested in having them apply erosion control immediately. So as many of you probably observed, the site was covered soon after with like a jute netting and fiber rolls, and it was like a cocktail napkin drawing that they implemented from my drawing at the counter. So that went on pretty quickly after. The county issued its first citation in May with a $100 fine. They have not paid any citations, and there's more to come in my chronology. At that time, they also submitted an application for a building permit for an after-the-fact legalization of the work that they had performed for a wall. With the county's geotechnical consultant's review of the wall design, it soon became obvious that a wall wasn't going to be the solution. All that cutting was, probably did more harm than good. And while the jute netting was helping to absorb the force of the rainfall on the disturbed soils, there was also concern that the water was also getting in under the jute netting and being directed into the scarp faster, the landslide scarp faster, due to the wall cut. So we were very concerned that, first off, we needed to secure the site with erosion control that wasn't prescribed or applied by unprofessional people, but was looked at by a geotechnical engineer and was then applied according to their direction. So the county informed them that they should have an erosion sediment control plan that was also reviewed by a geotechnical geotechnical engineer. So we asked them to do that. We didn't get much response. As you know, the site kind of stayed in its disturbed state with the erosion blanket over several months. We issued a second citation in July, a third citation in September. We finally received an erosion control plan, but it wasn't followed up by a geotechnical consultant's review. So then we finally got what we needed after we had a big county meeting with their lawyer, our lawyers, their consultants, our consultants. We finally decided that we were going to pursue these two paths: erosion control in the short term, and after the fact, coastal development permits for a wall or something better. So sort of a short term and a long term approach. So the county finally receives the erosion control plan that we're looking for with the geotechnical consultant's letter. I actually have copies. Where should I put these? Maybe at the back table, or I can just cut. So that's the geoconsultant's letter. These are copies of the erosion control plan. As you can read in the letter and in the plan, what they were supposed to do was backfill the trench that was cut, to backfilling, smoothing the grades so that the water would not be condensed, concentrated, and go into the scarp through the trench. Instead, the water would hit a smooth surface and sheet flow gently and smoothly as it did prior to the construction. So that was the intent of the erosion control plan. Also, the dirt that was applied was supposed to be compacted to a 90% level of compaction. So the dirt, once compacted to that percentage, doesn't go anywhere. So per the geotechnical consultant's letter, it has to be of a particular dryness. It specified like a 3% moisture content in the soil. And it also specified a 90% compaction, which is denser than the soil that is currently there.
Who monitored what soil was actually delivered?
The geotechnical consultant monitored, it sounded like on a weekly basis. They've only been working for about a month, since mid-March to now. So it sounded like they were there, the civil engineer and the geoconsultant were there very frequently. And the contractor that they hired seems quite diligent, actually.
How do you keep it dry when it's raining?
Diligent. What's that? I can finish. Maybe I should, can we just finish? Because it actually went a little bit differently than the county had anticipated. So I wanted you guys to be updated on that. So because of the moisture content that they wanted in the soil, even though the county approved the erosion control plan back in early February, they couldn't start work because of the rains, as you all remember, until about mid-March. So since mid-March, you've seen, many of you have seen the people working out there. Like I said, what they were supposed to do was they were supposed to compact the soil and smooth the grades, which they did. However, I've also learned that they did a little bit more than that. I think their intention was, I don't know at what stage they decided this, but instead of doing a short-term erosion control and doing all that compaction, and then coming back later and applying a different system, a permanent system, they decided, let's not go back in after we've compacted everything. Let's just do what we need to do according to the geotechnical report now. So what they've told us that they've done is they've compacted to 90%. They, under the supervision of their project geotechnical engineer, they also implemented a subgrade geogrid system. So you can't see it, but it's there underneath the soil and it's a structural system that holds the soil in place. And addition to that, they've added more soil. So under the erosion control plan, they were supposed to return the soil to the original pre-construction grade. Instead, they've eased the grade. It's not flat, but it's definitely flatter than it was before in order to ease the runoff. The rates of runoff, the flow, comes off faster off of a steeper slope. So as you probably have witnessed, the slope is less steep, and it's more flush with the uphill property, the Jennifer and Tom's property. The grades are more flush with that property now than they were before, and as you all know as well, this doesn't just affect their property, it affects adjoining properties. So in order to ease the grade and smooth the grade over the entire disturbed area, they did go on to other properties. And the county's always been of the official mindset that you're supposed to stay within the area of the permit, which is only private property. But for the good of the area that was disturbed, you have to go off the private property because the grades, if they're not returned to a smooth grade, there would be a sort of a juxtaposition in the grades, which would cause additional runoff and concentration of flows and erosion. So I think they're trying at this point to limit their civil liabilities, and they're trying to repair the damage that they did, which, you know, is not just on the subject property, but on adjoining properties. So they did go off the scope of the plan, but the county saw their effort in trying to reach the neighboring property owners. They did try to reach Mary Vogel. There wasn't any success there. However, to leave her property in a disturbed state that would, that would be different in elevation from the subject property would not have been necessarily responsible either, and would have caused additional damage to her property, which, I think to limit their civil liabilities, they had to do the job right. So
That's an opinion that they've done the job right?
that's an opinion, and it's their intent. I'm more stating their intent versus the county's review, because I have to say, they did. Do we need this?
It's just for the TV.
Oh, okay. So, I have to say, so they've finished the job about 90% done. It's so echoey. They're 90% done, and at this point, they've covered the site to protect the site from rain. But like I said, they're only 90% done. They might have to do a little additional grading in order to achieve the smooth grade that they're seeking. Then they're going to apply a local seed mix that they got a referral from the Resource Conservation District. I think it's called Pacific Seed Company or something to that effect, where they're getting a nice local mix of seed that they're going to apply to the site, and they're going to do an erosion blanket over it. So those are the remaining steps for the work at the site. As far as what the county needs, I've identified for them that, and they've agreed, at least their civil engineer has agreed and their contractor has agreed. I have not spoken with the property owner. They have agreed that they need to now come into the county with the materials reflecting the work that they did. Okay, they need a new geo report to reflect the recommendations that were applied already to the site, which was to build up the current grade, as well as to apply the geogrid. The materials in the county building department need to reflect what was done at the site. They also need to update their CDP application that reflects a wall proposal to reflect the geogrid that was applied at the site, which actually was reviewed by our county geotechnical consultant, and she agreed that the wall was not going to work, that the geogrid was a much better system for this property. They imported approximately 100 cubic yards of soil, so they don't need a grading permit. We will get formal calculations of grading, a formal grading plan showing existing grades as well as the grade that exists there now. Our county geotechnical engineer will review those. The necessary building structural plan checker in the county's department will review those plans, and we will see what we need to do in order to either approve or conditionally approve a coastal development permit at that site. But I get the feeling that they are diligent. They didn't want to go back in and redisturb the soil after they had put in their erosion control and done all their compaction, to dig that all back out, to put it in the geogrid. I'm not sure would have been the right situation, but I do wish that they communicated with the county a little bit better to tell us what they wanted to do, and then we can kind of give them a path forward. But I think they saw the urgency of the situation. They saw the neighborhood interest. They saw their own liabilities, and they decided just to do it once, do a permanent fix and be done with it and not have to redisturb. So, and they seem to have done this under the supervision of their geotechnical consultant as well as their civil engineer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have public comment. The reason I have Camille there is that you come here, you need to speak into the microphone or it won't be on the video, and it'll be a very strange show. So I have Sid Young and Sabrina, do you want to be with her? What's the plan here?
No,
You're separate?
She's on speaker slip, I think. She's the wrong person. We're not attached to the slip.
We just happen to live in the same neighborhood. Carlisle and Young. Sorry.
They're out on the table.
Carlisle and Young, 180 San Lucas Avenue, Moss Beach. I live down the street and kind of on the other side of the street from 105 San Lucas. But but I've lived there since 1988. And I was appalled when I saw them back in 2016, April of 2016, pushing all their vegetation onto Mary Vogel's property. And just left it there. So, and then they also were trying to install this retaining wall. And that was taken April 26th of last year. No notice to any of the neighbors, you know, just let's come on in and do what we want to shore up our property. That's their setback right there is about 5 feet from their house. So where they're putting that retaining wall, they had to go on her property. My neighbor is Mary Vogel, and the county actually tore her house down because it was sitting on the landscape scarp several years ago. And basically, the county made her legally homeless. They took her house and tore it down. And this is the corner of San Lucas and Ocean Boulevard, where, as you can see, back in January, there was a water main leak right after they've been starting to disturb basically with heavy equipment up and down that lot there, they broke one of the water mains. I feel they did. I can't be sure. And the county had to come and repave that section of the road afterwards because it started dipping much more. This is the house back in March after the second water main break. That is the driveway for Mary Vogel's former property house, and that's where the water main broke because they had you could see some of that rolled up burlap or whatever you want to call it, kind of, I don't know what it's there for, but probably to keep the mud from flowing out onto the street after they drove up and down. Here's when we started noticing big piles of dirt in the yard and the heavy equipment on their driveway, and they had their driveway blocked. And then, go ahead, Dave. Then I saw that they were driving up and down on Mary Vogel's lot to take this soil down further into her property. And again, right where you see the air conditioning unit kind of tilting, that's the side of their property. They had no right to go onto her property whatsoever, and that's where they pushed all the ceanothus and stuff off of the vegetation that had been there previously and just dumped it on her land. And so you can see they've really disturbed the soil. The guy kind of, you can see the waves behind him. He was pounding with compacting equipment. Again, no neighbors were ever noticed, and I did get an email from Camille saying, well, because it's erosion control, we don't need to notify the neighbors, but this is major. And we all have been living in this area for a long time and are concerned about our soil moving and the fact that they're bringing in tonnage. I mean, look how the size of that truck. It's as big as the house, and they were bringing in 3 or 4 or 5 truckloads that day. So I went down to talk with Don Horsley at Donuts for Don, and I came back and there's more trucks dumping dirt. So it was over several days that they did this. And actually, I don't know if there's any more photos. Oh yeah, there's one of the pictures. After they were trespassing on her lot and they covered it all with plastic, you can see all the debris they left on her lot. Just, you know, garbage, basically pipes and old concrete footings and burlap bags and black plastic, plus all the vegetative matter that they pushed there in the past. So, you know, as a neighbor, I just don't think this was something that should have been allowed by the county, and you guys may go along with it because, oh, they went with your geologist's idea of smoothing out the grade, but their lot, when they bought it, already had a big steep hill. So why should they be allowed to push off soil and smooth out things onto somebody else's property? Just give me that one answer why you guys are allowing it. That's all I'm saying. I just can't believe it. And you can see that here's the tire tracks where they've gone on her property. And they wrapped up the old driveway gate post with caution tape. So I'm kind of upset about it, mostly because it gave no notice to any of the neighbors or anything. And I just feel it was really irresponsible of the county. And, I mean, it sounds like you're just going along with whatever plan they throw out there.
Well, I think to have left the cut that was there was like a 4-foot high cut that was concentrating the water, I think would have been more irresponsible.
This is the other half of Sid's presentation.
All right, look, we're doing one speaker at a time, and you answer, then we'll have the next person.
I forgot. I asked a friend of mine to bring their drone over. I don't know if you could start it over.
The switches are right over next to you, Sabrina.
I don't know if you can start it over, but you can really see the way the lens.
Can we start it over, because there's a section that we missed.
This shows, I think this was taken on Sunday. This shows where the county has had to close Ocean Boulevard because it's been fractured and ruptured. There's the scarp that's running through the vacant lot at the end of San Lucas and Ocean Boulevard. And that scarp is natural, Camille. It's not something that needs to be, you know, plowed over because somebody wants to keep their house from falling. That is the natural scarp. That's the natural feature of our neighborhood. And, you know, for them to be allowed to start scraping up the land, maybe everybody should be allowed to. You can see that they've really completely taken over on Mary's parcel and just thrown all that debris over the side, like, you know, hers is just the garbage dump and theirs is the private, you know, the special property. So they've gone way past where they should have gone, even if they are trying to smooth it out. But I think it's wrong. And you can go on Bing and look up their original, the way the lot used to look before they started doing all this work on a previous realtor's listing, and see what their backyard used to look like before they started scraping it off and throwing it onto Mary's land. Anyway, that's the final.
Okay.
Sabrina's next.
I can't see my notes. Catherine Slater Carter. Sorry.
Hi, Catherine Slater Carter, and I'm here as a resident of Montera and Lost Beach, even though I serve on the Montera Water and Sanitary District, and some of my comments will actually relate to that. Sid did tell me about our big leak, and she did tell me that it was due to this heavy-duty construction. I've been concerned, well, the sewer district and the water district, Montero Water and Sanitary, actually have pipes that are flexible in Seal Cove because there is so much earth movement there. We have a map from our assessment district from, I think it was the 70s or early 80s, that actually shows the zones of heavy and active earth movement. And this is in that area. When I was walking out in Seal Cove last fall on Ocean Avenue, there were some areas and I went, oh wow. I was out there the other day and there's 6-inch splits in the pavement. With all this rain, we've had almost 41 inches of rain this year. So I don't know how anything could have been compacted at 3%. The earth has not dried out to 3%. For any time, and all they're doing is putting a compacted plate on top of some fracturing soils with a lot of water in it. This person apparently recently bought this home. It has a spectacular ocean view because many of the houses that used to be between it and the ocean have gone over. So this is nothing new to the people who live in Seal Cove, but apparently it's news to the county. And I'm really surprised. The county has a history of not taking care of the public health and safety of our communities on the coast here, both for water and for sanitation and for construction and all kinds of things. We have so many individual wells, I won't even go into that in the urban area, that are potentially problematic. I'll just leave it at a general kind of word. But for the earthquake faults in Seal Cove, that has been known forever. And to limit the investigation to one piece of property within the property lines, which is what you did, what the county did, not you, Camille, but the county, with the individual wells, some of which we have 6 and 8 and 10 in a row with no kind of environmental study on their impact one on the other, or what it does to the groundwater tables or anything. But we're also now looking at what is happening with a lack of overall examination of what that area is. And in this particular instance, and in the instance of Seal Cove, looking at just within the property lines is not a real appropriate way of assessing the risks to the community. This is moving, and in this particular year, like I say, we've had twice as much rain this year as we have had in not too many years past. So things are shifting a lot. As the Harbor District knows, with the fallout on the Mavericks Road, you can see what's happening out there as the water comes in. So I don't have a solution. I have a request that the county actually take a broader perspective on looking at public health and safety for our communities and our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Sabrina?
Thank you. So there's so much wrong with this. I don't even know where to start. But I guess I'll start with the rain. We're hearing a lot about how the soil has to be certain dryness, or, you know, the scheduling of this was wrapped around the rain and the soil dryness and what have you. Well, it's raining, and it's raining today. It's been raining recently. And if anybody has been out there, then they've seen what I've seen, which is that black plastic stuff is blowing all over the place. It's pooling water. The water's then pouring into the new soil that has come in with the numerous dump truck loads, which Sid talked about one day of multiple dump truck loads, but I watched dump trucks go by my house more than one day. And I don't know what 10 cubic yards is. How much can you fit in the dump? 100, you said?
I believe it's 100 is the total, and I believe it's 10 or so within one truck. Something to
Okay,
that effect.
so I don't know how many dump truck runs they did. Was anybody monitoring that?
The county was there on a weekly basis.
So no, because the county wasn't there when the dump trucks were coming.
That was our
You guys have a better,
Sense of it.
yeah.
Okay,
probably we do.
well, let's just say it was a lot of soil, and
Yeah.
what it looks like to me is it looks like these people in this house, that they've never lived in, by the way, that own the hotel in Lindemar, the one with the little pointy roofs, that's the same people. It looks to me like what they were trying to do is make a bigger yard for themselves. So they built up the soil to the height of their own property, which had already eroded away, and now they've created a yard for themselves on someone else's property, which happens to be Mary Vogel's property, and the county went along with them, essentially taking her property. I don't know how else to read it. I mean, I go out there and look, and it looks like, I know where 8 feet is, and if it's 8 feet from the house where their property line is, now they've created a lot more flat ground beyond 8 feet that extends out into Mary Vogel's property. And it just looks to me like they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. I'm sorry, Camille, I don't want to get in a back and forth with you, because I think we'd have to talk to the various experts, because I know that there have been a lot of people involved with this. You've got Jean DeMuth, the county geologist who lives in Montera. You've got various people that you're working with.
And we haven't actually stamped anything approved. We approved an erosion control plan along with a geotechnical letter, And that was all that we approved. So to say that the county's, allowed them to do this or approved anything, I
Okay,
would say
well-
is incorrect.
But the county did give them the go-ahead to do all these dump truck loads and all this stuff that's
No,
been going on.
they were supposed to return it to the natural grade.
Oh, so what
to
you're
the
saying is that they
pre-construction
did
grades.
not follow through.
They exceeded the scope.
They exceeded the scope of what you did say they could do.
That's right.
And what you did say they could do, you allowed them to do without a CDP.
We allowed them to repair the site to the pre-existing grades as a short-term fix, as well they were applying for a CDP for a permanent fix.
Okay, so I think part of the problem is that the county is probably not equipped to really assess the situation, because I understand when we talked that you guys hadn't come up with a plan for revegetating, and I'm glad that now that's happening, so I think that's an improvement. But I also understand that there was a decision made that there didn't need to be a real drainage plan. And drainage is really key to this landside situation. And it's affecting the other property owners that own homes around there, as well as people who own parcels. And so what I'm concerned about is that the Coastal Commission didn't get on this situation right away, because frankly, and I don't want to insult anybody at the county, but I trust the Coastal Commission's oversight more than I trust the county's oversight in this situation. And I think it's really critical that there be some input from the Coastal Commission at this point. And I don't think that the county really evaluated the extenuating circumstances of how some of this runoff and erosion that's happening due to the fact that this whole landslide was opened up and all the vegetation was removed during the wettest winter, or spring that we've had in a long time. And then it sloughed off all the soil directly into the ocean, which is a violation of the Coastal Act. You can't do that. There are so many problems with this project. It's just hard to fathom. So how do we step back and get input from experts that the community could trust and take another look at this? It may be that this whole thing that they just did, which you say doesn't follow their plan, but yet you said you think they're diligent. I don't think they're diligent at all. And I don't think anybody in here thinks they're diligent. At least I haven't heard of anybody saying that. So how do we reevaluate this and get some more input and maybe think about, is it better to leave it as it is? Is it better to maybe do it a different way? And how did we get to this point without Mary Vogel's buy-in, given that all of this is done on her property? I mean, that's the craziest part about this whole project. I can't even imagine, if I was traveling and I went away for a while and wasn't around to check in all the time, and all of a sudden my next door neighbor had decided that they were gonna take over my property, build up the elevation, and make an additional yard out of it for themselves. I mean, that's how it looks to me. And I think we need to advocate, on behalf of the property owners. And these people are doing things that are not on their property. And that's not okay. And I understand that, you guys were really concerned about the illegal work that happened, trying to fix that. And I get that, and I appreciate that very much. But I'm just not feeling very certain or convinced that what has happened here, which did not match apparently what you guys told them to do, is in the best interest of the landowners that surround this property. And I would love to hear from these hotel owner people about, where they get off doing this without the proper permits. I mean, it's really appalling. And the fact that they haven't even paid $100 fine for doing this is really concerning to me. And what about the Coastal Act? Are they gonna have to pay fines, because they violated, potentially Coastal Commission jurisdiction? I mean, there are just a lot of questions. I'm just very concerned how we got to this state, and how do we, as a community, find a different path, because we don't know what's gonna happen next. They could do anything. I mean, I heard that their pipes were all breaking, their air conditioner units started to fall over, and I mean, they're on a landslide. But just because you're on a landslide doesn't mean that you get to go build out your next door neighbor's property to fix your problem. It doesn't work like that, you know? When they bought that property, they knew they were on a landslide, just like Catherine Slater Carter said. Thank you.
So I guess I just wanted to clarify that the first citation was 100, a second citation in July was 200, a third citation in September was 500, and there was a December citation for another 500, totaling 1,300. And I also wanted to say that the reason why the county issued all these citations is because we simply could not leave it in the state that it was in. We wanted them to do something to make sure that the site was, at least in the short term, protected from heavy rains, runoff, erosion. So I feel like the county's really put forth a very large effort, even before I would say that the community was really pushing for it. We've put so much pressure on the property owner to do something, to smooth out the grade so the rain just wouldn't, keep concentrating within that cut that they made. And the fact that they went over onto Mary Vogel's property, the county did not authorize that. I mean, they blazed through those properties, their own and others around it, without any type of county, permits or asking at all. They just went and did. So when the county asked them to do the erosion control, honestly, the only way to do that properly, instead of just containing the repair to the property itself, was to go on to other properties and to smooth those grades as well. I mean, I don't know which is worse, going onto Mary Vogel's property to repair or leaving it in the state that it was.
They left Ocean Boulevard in the state that it's in. The county decommissioned Ocean Boulevard. They've abandoned it. And that cracks open and lets water in every day of the week.
Okay, the next speaker is Carol Dion.
Well, it was a bit of a rape on Miss Vogel's land. They came in on a weekend with these machines, and they had plumber's trucks, so we thought maybe it was just an emergency. But then, luckily, the county found out they didn't have permits and all. But I like the address that it's the whole area that's concerned. I mean, I'm glad you're going to plant flowers and things, that's great, but there's a lot going on. I have the house right next to Miss Vogel's lot. It's 88 years old, and it's been sturdy, good foundation. I've been there 55 years, almost 50 years, I should say. And I haven't seen so much movement in that time. The house is, and Social Security is all I've got, so I'm keeping an eye on it. This is not pleasant. What's happening with all the moving is the electric lines are ready to snap. The water pipes have broken 3 times in the past little while. They've scraped away half my front garden and took down a couple trees, but all that can be fixed. What I'm worried about is the gas line. I stopped a PG&E guy. He looked like an official, and I asked him, I said, what about the pipes? And I said I didn't want San Lucas to become a San Bruno. Mm-hmm. So he said, well, San Bruno was big pipes, and you've just got those little pipes. And I thought, well, gas. So I didn't understand. But so I'm glad that it was spoken about the whole county area, this whole area. And here's someone from the county that can find out how to address all this. And I appreciate that. I don't want us to go flambe, I'll tell you that.
Thank you. The county actually did call PG&E and reported this when the gas meter started pulling away.
At 105.
Yeah. Our county geologist who lives in the area, as you know, spotted that, and we called PG&E, and they had someone go by, and they didn't think it was an emergency of any kind, so.
Alan Moss?
Oh, I actually wanted to address one other question
Sure, go
that
ahead.
Sabrina mentioned about Coastal Commission oversight. The CDP, the likely after-the-fact CDP that will be necessary for this project will definitely go to the Coastal Commission. All the geotechnical reports that, that reflect the current situation, which is the built-up grades, like you were saying about perhaps they were flattening for a larger yard. If they're saying that that's tied to geotechnical recommendations to ease the flow of the water, to ease the erosion, to soften the flows over the entire site. If they're saying that that's tied to geotechnical recommendations, they will need to provide those, and that will all be part of the CDP, and that will all be reviewed by the Coastal Commission. And there are penalty CDPs for after-the-fact, fees for after-the-fact CDPs.
John?
Thank you. So I live across the street from this site, and I've watched this from day one, and I think I was close to, if not the first one that called the county about the illegal trenching without a permit, which is interesting because I think they pulled maybe 5 permits when they were redoing the house. But they, for some reason, didn't apply for a permit to dig this trench, to put in this wall that they decided to do, quote unquote, because their marble tiles were cracking in the house. When they bought this house, they were required to sign a piece of paper that they knew they were in a special zone and that they had been advised of potential harm that could happen. When they bought the house, the scarp that was about 2 feet from there, from the actual building, was maybe 2 feet, maybe a little bit more. They knew about it, they went in, they bought the house, they did work for a year, then they decided to put in this trench. Since that time, all kinds of things have happened. I'm not a trained eye, I walk it every day, I see the movement. I can't say much more than that, except there's obviously been accelerated movement. I can't put a percentage or divide it between the amount of rain we've had this year and what they did. What I do know is this, and what I hear tonight is this, that no one is in control of what has happened out there. No one is in control of what is happening out there, and it doesn't seem to me that no one is in control of what will happen there. The county, with all due respect, has, I think, failed to protect the people that live there. They have failed to protect the environment there. They have failed to protect the known dangers that will have to happen when you go in and do something like that. There are mixed messages for a starting point. When we first met with you when you came out there and with the geologist, county geologist, we were specifically told that the final solution to this was going to be that that the contours would be put in place so that all the water would be collected at one point, the low point on the land towards ocean, and it would be pumped up to San Lucas and go into the drains there to get.
That was for a structural solution. So if you concentrated the water behind a wall, you couldn't discharge the water from the low end of the wall onto, ocean and towards the water. You'd have to pump it up to the street. But in this instance, they didn't do a structural fix. They simply put the grade back and compacted it to the original or slightly built up grades. So they're not concentrating the water, anyway.
So I can't debate that with you, I don't know.
Okay.
What I was told is they were not gonna be allowed to build a wall, they were not gonna be allowed to substitute any kind of new wall, everything was gonna flow down to the low point and be mechanically pumped up to the street so it could flow naturally with the rest of the water runoff. That obviously, from what you're saying, is not gonna happen.
It's not necessary.
Okay. And I guess I don't, having been involved in the past with kind of similar issues, I don't understand how this is gonna be allowed to go forward without adequate planning, without any kind of oversight on a daily basis. You have said that the geotech guy has been out there. I've never seen him. I'm out there every day. I've never seen him.
He's a large
Yep.
guy, wears glasses.
Never seen him. You mentioned 100 cubic yards. There is no way they dumped 100 cubic yards of dirt there. There are too many truckloads. There's too much dirt. There are too many days, and no one is there to watch and document what they are doing. What has been left there is crazy. It's just crazy. And the people that are doing the work without supervision are a bunch of really nice guys that are probably being paid $10 an hour to break their backs to try and use these handheld compactors to try to do this. That's what they're doing. That's all they're doing. They don't have a clue what they're doing. They're not sitting there with plans and saying, we have to do this and this and this because that's what the plans say. They're just out there just making it up out of the air. A different expression came to mind, but I tried to stifle it. Anyway, so it seems to me that being a public body, being a public employee, it seems to me that someone needs to get a hold of the situation, stop it, supervise it, make sure it's planned, make sure there are experts involved in how this is supposed to be done, because this is a tragedy that is going to happen. Absolutely. This is just total craziness with what's going on out there. And the people that are doing this work, by the way, that you're putting your reliance on, are plumbers. These are not landscapers. These are not geotech workers. These are plumbers.
It's done under the
Plumbers.
supervision of licensed professionals.
Who are missing an act.
Plumbers. These are plumbers. These are not people that know how to grade land, compact land, know what the hell they're doing, take measurements and compact it to 90%. No one's out there taking measurements about anything. That hasn't happened. You say the county's out there once a week. That is
We are.
totally insufficient. Totally. And these people are so unreasonable that they wouldn't stop work when I called you on the phone. They wouldn't stop work so these guys could have lunch and have their lunch hour delayed for an hour, waiting for someone to get there that you sent out there. They wouldn't show me the plan. They wouldn't talk to me. They wouldn't say anything. These people are unreasonable, and they are not complying with the county and what should be happening out there. That's what's happening. And I don't know how to get the county's attention so that that happens. I don't know if there's a mechanism for doing it. I would think there has to be. God knows I spent enough hours of my life dealing with the county on geotech stuff and other things. And that this can be allowed to happen here is just totally beyond the pale, and it's absolutely beyond me. And it's been going on now for, as you say, a year.
Yes.
And it needs to stop. And it needs to stop and go back and be studied and come up with some kind of solution. Enough said. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you.
Steve Beardsley?
Thank you. May I respond to Mr. Moss? Mr.
Sure, go
Moss,
ahead.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So, my son's getting tired. So the county has had oversight. Jean and I met you and some other neighbors out at the site. Jean has reviewed the initial, I want to say there's been 2 geotechnical reports, as well as the memo that is, that reviews the erosion control plan. It was meant to be a short-term erosion control plan, which is now turned to a permanent fix, albeit without county permits. It is based on, the fix was based on the geotechnical reports that were submitted and reviewed by the county. They will need to jump through the hoops and give us the additional information of the work that they did, the additional geotechnical recommendations, and they will need to obtain permits, all of which will be reviewed before the permits are issued. There will need to be some inspection of the land to see whether the work that was done meets geotechnical specifications. So I assure you, the county's been honestly involved, honestly, I feel like on a week-to-week basis for the past year. We've been in communication with the neighbors. We've been in communication with all of our consultants. We will continue to be. They've implemented the short-term fix. I think we can check that off. As far as the permanent fix, we need to review that further. But it did need to be fixed. There needed to be an immediate fix to the situation. The disturbance and the amount of excavation was damaging to the neighborhood.
So can I respond? Am I allowed to respond?
Real quick, it's just, we got a long meeting, we're really running late.
Thanks, I'll be real. So I appreciate the efforts of the county, let me be perfectly clear about that. But what you just said is all retroactive. It's all of doing things in hindsight, once it's done. And what you just said was, we will go back and look at what they've done with their temporary fix. Well, they're not gonna undo what they just spent all this money to do and with all this soil. You are condemning this piece of land to the contours that they just put in. Whether or not that complies with this permit or not, they're not gonna change that unless you make them dig it all up and redo it some other way.
It needs to be done the right way.
I'm sorry?
It needs to be done the right way.
Who determines the right way? What is
After
that
our
process?
review, we do have the leverage to make them make fixes as necessary.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve?
Hello, Steve Beardsley, 32-year resident of Seal Cove. I've seen a lot of changes over the years. The previous speakers have made some really excellent points, and I agree with them. I want to offer my support. The question for the county, is there any plan in place for when this happens to the next house?
Good question.
I really hope they'll obtain permits before doing any kind of
Yeah.
work.
Okay.
They need to have professionals on board at the beginning. They need to obtain permits. I think a lot of this happened, without that.
I guess what I'm getting at is that I think the people in the neighborhood kind of feel like they're on their own. If their house starts to move or crack or anything, what's the process to get that repaired? If there was an easier way, or maybe the county had a flyer they could hand out and say, here's what you need to do, to get this repaired, that might be really helpful and avoid the problems like you've had at 105 San Lucas. So that's all I have to add to keep it short. Thank you.
Would that be a convenient segue into the other house that's actually
Sure.
applied to shore up their house?
Sure.
Are they, by the way, are both these houses in the zone 1 of the Seal Cove geological?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
One and two.
Could I just ask, one
You know,
related to?
It's 9 o'clock. We have 2 more items. Could you really be quick?
Okay. So I just wanted to follow up because the comment about, I'm quoting Camille, she said that, the county can check off the short-term fix. I take issue with that because the short-term fix, as Camille already said, wasn't executed the way the county told the landowner, the property owner, to execute it. So you can't check off the short-term fix at all because it wasn't done correctly. And I'm not sure that the county's idea of what should have been done correctly was based on good science to begin with. We really don't have enough information to back that up at this point. So I think that needs to be reevaluated. And then as far as the county making a decision to trust the landowner to do this work after they had repeatedly proven that they were not trustworthy because they had not gotten permits, they had done crazy things that made their own land slide even more than it was. Why wasn't there a stop work order until the county could oversee the whole thing every day and charge them for doing it? It doesn't make sense to me that you would entrust these people who clearly haven't earned the trust of anyone to execute this work, and then when you did, that you're telling us that they didn't execute it according to your plan. And I know for a fact that every time I've gone by and I've seen the work happening, there hasn't been anybody from the county there. I have never once, and I work from home, I walk by there multiple times a day. I have never once seen anyone from the county there. I have walked up and talked to the people working there and talked to them many times, and I have videos of that which will be posted on YouTube. One's uploading right now. But I haven't had those interactions with the county, so it just doesn't feel like the oversight that you're claiming has actually occurred, and I think that's why the community feels a lack of trust. And I know you guys are busy. I know the county has other things to focus on, like the next crazy project we're about to hear about. So I get that, but somehow I think it should be on the landowners to pay for this heightened level of oversight that needs to occur. So, thank you.
I agree with that. And when I said that where the short-term fix is less of a concern is because the purpose is erosion control and the concentration of water into that trench. The trench no longer exists. The site, the grades have been smoothed. I think we have achieved some amount of progress. To have left the trench open.
We have trenches all over, Camille. Yeah. We're full of trenches.
I've heard from immediate neighbors that they were very concerned, including Alan Moss, that they were very concerned about the concentration of water into the scarp. And there was concern on the part of the county as well.
Okay.
So the concentration of water into that scarp was not an ideal situation. The grades needed to be returned in order for there to be erosion control, okay? Controlling erosion, controlling the water flows that were damaging on that property, on adjacent properties. And then as far as, I forgot where my train of thought is, okay.
Oh, the other house?
Just our erosion control inspector is also a building inspector. His name is Jeremiah Pons. He's been out there every week since the grading started and checking on general erosion control, making sure things don't spill out into the street. I would say it's more general. It's not checking grade levels, the grade elevations, and I had, well, that's not what we do. We don't enforce trespass.
Could, going forward, I mean, we obviously have an interested neighborhood group.
Yes.
Could we set up a plan for how the communication can be more robust? I mean, for you to give reports to reach everybody.
Absolutely.
So that they can ask questions.
I brought my cards. You're free to them. I have a group that I have been emailing on a regular basis over the past year of neighbors. I've added additional neighbors, the ones that have reached out to me.
Okay, so they could, if they want to be on that list, they can contact you?
Yeah, just email me and I'll add you to the group, and I'll try to update you as much as possible. I have to say, things are dynamic. We're waiting on updated documents from the property owner. Sabrina was saying that the county trusts the property owner. I don't think that's the case at all. We only found out today, and I told them if you do any more work, we are going to do a stop work notice, but we need you to hydroseed and just to, finish it out. But no more work after that, absolutely not. Or they will get a stop work notice.
Lisa, I'd like to make one, I think there needs to be a serious clarification here. Camille, I keep hearing you talk about erosion control.
Yes.
These are fault lines. These are deep seismic events that are happening in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the county needs to look at this a little bit differently than a simple erosion control.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree.
And
we've never asked for a geotechnical letter on an erosion control plan, since I've been with the county.
When you're sitting here telling all the neighbors that this is about erosion, this is not about simple little erosion kind of stuff. This
no.
is serious geotechnical issues that are
I
not going to
completely
be
agree.
fixed with a retaining wall.
I completely agree.
And maybe you should look at what adding more water to San Lucas will do to the neighbors. Because there are earthquake faults, you've been hearing about zone 1 and zone 2, you've probably looked at those maps that I mentioned. But if you're adding more water to those, you may be increasing problems for the neighbors. So I think you need to be very careful and precise in talking about seismic events and seismic faults, not just erosion. Thank you.
I really think we need to have a community meeting in Seal Cove, and we need to have the geologists there. We should have the homeowners there. We should have Supervisor Horsley there. We should have representatives from planning and building. This has not gone well, and there needs to be a higher level of accountability and public outreach. So if we could set up a meeting like that, I think we're at that point where that needs to happen. And I don't think anybody feels good about it right now. I'm sure you don't, and we don't. And I think there are a lot of worries about what this property owner might do next. We don't know. You know, they seem to do whatever they want. So.
Okay, that sounds like a plan.
Yes.
So you're.
I will bring that up to Steve Monowitz. We can set up a public meeting of, maybe he comes to the MCC, maybe it's outside of the MCC, we'll figure it out.
Depends if how long you want it to go on. Maybe you better have just your community meeting.
Right.
Because we may be getting busy with other
Okay,
issues.
okay.
Otherwise, we'd have to have a special
Great,
meeting,
yeah.
but we'll play it by ear.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Camille.
No problem. Did we want to talk briefly about this one and then we can call it a night?
I guess we do, yes.
Okay. So, 125 Las Banas, the property was red tagged. As you can all tell, the structure's basically pulling itself apart. It's located on a scarp. By our geotechnical consultant's requirement is to separate the house from the garage. As you can see, there's some tension there. So the requirement was that, and the property owner has determined that he'll get rid of the garage completely. We support that. There's no relocation of the garage to a proper location on the site. It would just be on top of another scarp. So what he's applying for right now is an off-street parking exception, so essentially the house will not have a garage. The house is going to be, was recently purchased. Russ, come here a second. The house was recently purchased, and they want to remodel the house, really really just completely change the look of the house. It's still going to be within the existing footprint. They will maintain a majority of the existing walls. It will not be a replacement, a house replacement. It will be a repair. They're changing the roof line a bit, so they will have to go to the CDRC, and due to the significant change to the design, they have to go to the CDRC. Their original proposal includes an addition, a 50-square-foot addition. The county is not allowing that. It's in Zone 1. No additional construction can be allowed in Zone 1. So what they're going to do is they're going to take back the HIE, they're going to withdraw that application, and they're going to submit plans without that addition.
And I noticed you said they have to take the deck off because it wasn't permitted.
Yeah. And there was a large deck in the rear setback. I could not find permits for that. And just by its location in the rear setback, it was strange.
Will there be any grading that's going to open up this similar kind of an issue?
There will be a foundation upgrade for which some grading will occur. There is a geotechnical soils report that's been submitted to the county. It has been reviewed by the county's geotechnical consultant.
Can they do that like in June and July and not get into any rainy season? I mean.
They can do it per the geotechnical recommendations. It's not going to be a grading permit. It's not that major of a grading project, so. It's just it's a coastal permit exemption and a design review permit at this point.
So you know the distillery parking lot is cracked.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
they've been notified this guy wants to do the uphill remodel?
He's allowed to repair I mean, there's actually, you know, no assurance of any type of permanent structure staying put over the next, you know, long-term, 100 years or anything like that, so it's just for repair.
This is still just at the early referral phase.
Yeah,
We got
once
early
we
referrals.
agendize it, they still have, their project's basically incomplete, they have to resubmit plans showing no addition and demo of the deck. So they're a little ways from a CDRC meeting, but once a CDRC meeting is scheduled, it will be noticed to the neighbors. Okay. And there's plans here if you want to take a look.
Thank you very much, Camille.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.
Turn on the
I'll leave,
machine here.
I won't leave this whole stuff.
Can I ask a question about that project?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I put in a speaker slip. I don't know if you guys.
I didn't say what it was for. I thought we'd already covered it.
Well, this is a totally separate project.
I thought it was something I already called you for. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem, Lisa, no big deal at all. So I was surprised that this was on the agenda tonight, so I'm glad it was, because I wanted to hear about it. There was, I know, a neighborhood meeting with the landowner, and I believe the architect was there as well. It's just something the neighbors did.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So, yeah, it wasn't a county.
Yeah, I didn't know about it.
And I wasn't there because I had a Harbor District meeting that
Okay.
night, but I was told that the way that it's being designed is specifically so that as the land continues to drop, as we know that it is, that the house will then move into the distillery's parking lot, but they're building the foundation so that it'll just drop down and it'll just keep moving down the hill, but somewhat stay upright. Now, the problem with this is similar to the distillery, where the distillery has moved so much that it is now in someone else's property. I was told this today by a realtor, Rick, our neighbor, Rick Harding. So that can happen, and I'm not sure the county probably hasn't really thought about it, but if you're permitting people to build, whether it's a red tag or what, and they're building things with the intention that it will move on to someone else's parcel, that doesn't seem to be like a good plan. And so I think that the
No.
county needs to develop some very specific policies around this, and when it appears that someone's remodel or development project is potentially going to be migrating into someone else's parcel, you guys need to pull the plug on these projects. This just cannot happen. This is insane, and it needs to stop. So I think you guys need to pull back, take a really close look at how this happens, because we've all seen the cypress trees, and I know you have, Lisa Ketchum, where crazy erosion happens, but the cypress tree that was here is now, like, still upright, but it's down in the, in the gully.
landslide.
Yeah, but it's still upright. Well, people want their houses to do that, but the problem is that gully isn't their land. The gully's actually owned by somebody like Mary Vogel, who was here tonight. So, we just need to think about what we're doing. We can't just permit anything. So what's the process for people who have a concern about this project? What's the next steps?
You can grab a card. You can, of course, submit written correspondence for any project at any time. You don't have to wait for a notice.
Just by a parcel number or a street
The
address?
early
Or address.
The early
It's
referral.
2017-00085.
The early referral is with the meeting materials on our website, and it says what the project is, and it says who to contact. The MCC is not scheduled to make any particular comment on it, but feel free.
It would be great if we could tie this into the county's meeting with the neighborhood related to San Lucas as well, because these are problems that are facing our neighborhood that we need to come up
Right.
with solutions
And they're
for.
technical problems around the landslide concerns.
It
Thank
looks,
you.
looks to me like a couple more slips like we had this winter, and you won't be able to access the distillery parking lot.
Oh, yeah.
On
Yeah,
his
there's a
area.
lot of data on the
Literally
movement of
separated
that
by
lot.
7 or 6 inches with the street.
There's
And
a lot of
when you come
data
up
on
out
that.
of there, you gotta gun it, and you can't see what's up above.
Yeah,
So,
yep.
anyway, thanks again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So before you go, Camille, sorry, I know you're really trying to get out
Oh,
of
no,
here.
it's
Lisa's
fine.
really trying to make Does the county have any zoning or building rules around landslides that are known to be active and moving over time?
Yeah, there's Zone 1, Zone 2, and Zone 3 of the GH
I'll put
district.
that up on our website too.
Okay, I missed the.
And
I
there's-
just recently
I'll go
put
back
it
and
up,
look. Thanks.
yeah,
All I need
it's
is-
there.
There's different restrictions based on which zone you're in, and Zone 1 is the worst.
You're not supposed to build in zone
It's,
one.
it's very.
But you're allowed to
That's a new
repair.
building, this is repair, so
Yeah.
that's why I was asking.
Exactly.
Repair is a completely different thing.
Yes. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having this on your.
Thank you for coming.
That child must have been very bored.
Okay, here we go. This is the next item, this is the riprap at Montera Beach. So, we had, where to begin? I'm stuck in Seal Cove. Let me just go through this. Okay, so this is about the riprap, the hazards, scenic views, public access. Some history here, there's pictures of in 1983, the El Nino year, when they rushed out there to save the restaurant. That was only 4 years after the restaurant was built. More history, the permit for the restaurant was from the Coastal Commission, and the county told them that the bluff didn't have any rapid erosion, so it's all good. And then in the county gave the emergency permit for the riprap in 93. And then unknown date, this concrete slurry that's all over the bottom of that happened sometime before 2006. We don't know when. They didn't get permits for that. It was under prior owner and whatever. So, maintenance and useful life of riprap. This is over 30, it's about 34 years old. And so it's undermined, it's hazardous. You remember the long permitting that's been going on with La Costanera, and they were trying to get weekend hours and whatever. And part of that package was to repair the riprap, and they got this report, this 2010 report from BAGG, which is quoted in these bullet points here, that it wasn't keyed down into the firm ground. The drainage from the parking lot empties out behind the walls, so that tends to undermine it as well. And they had some solutions there for how that ought to be fixed, but nothing has happened at all with that. Here's the south of the staircase, these caves under there. I took my life in my hands and measured it, so 7 feet deep there. And that goes back as far as under those larger boulders. Did I skip some? Oh, no, there was that other picture. Okay, so aesthetics. So you have, this is another issue with armoring the coast. So you have this beautiful natural cliff face at Montera Beach, and the entire view shed that's been preserved as open space. And then you put these rocks there, and it's unfortunate. So and since then, you know, in the last 30 years, they've come up with some better ideas, like these concrete tie-back seawalls that mimic the ocean bluff. I mean, I had this fantasy when I first read that they had to repair the riprap. I thought, well, wow, why not just take it out and start over, or put in this kind of wall? Well, that's probably a pipe dream, but anyway, I wanted to point that out. Okay, so then if you look at the coastal records image here with this riprap, where I drew the red line, so in front of the restaurant, they decided that was tall enough. And clearly they had a lot of extra rocks back in 1983, and they left them all over the top of the bluff. And so you drive up to the parking lot and you're looking at the rocks. Or if you get out of the car and want to get closer to the edge to see the breach, the rocks are in the way. And so, so we're asking that they take out those extra rocks. And when I say they, so here's where, this is why we're having this presentation now. Because the whole thing with the Coastal Act violations, the restaurant was settled a month or so ago, where the Coastal Commission and the property owners signed a consent agreement, and they agreed to pay certain fines and do certain things. I won't get into all that now, but part of it is that they're supposed to improve this trail along here, make a little seating area and whatnot, and so the Coastal Commission gets to decide, you know, okay, they want to see what the plan is, and they'll say, okay, this is good enough. So what I want to do is send a copy of this to the Coastal Commission and to Mark Massaro, who's representing the restaurant, and say, well, let's, you know, optimally, we can get rid of all those rocks and just make a, you know, it would be less of a scar, and there would be more, it would be better all the way around. And landscape and ocean views, so that the problem with weeds there, basically the obvious weeds that are, they don't take care of the garden anymore, but then these shrubs, these invasive shrubs that have invaded the riprap, one of them, Pittosporum, these are garden escapees. And basically there's naturally tall shrubs, like 12 feet tall. I mean, the one in the picture here is relatively small now, but they're gonna grow nothing but bigger. The one in the lower right, that picture, that's walking down the trail, sort of like the coastal trail, and you can see these bushes, pretty soon they're gonna block the whole view, so they should come out. So there's the recommendations of what we ideally would like for the landscaping. And then the last thing is the question of enforcement. So in this staff report, the Coastal Commission, for this consent agreement, they acknowledged that the MCC had written about this deteriorating riprap way back when, one of our earlier letters, and they said that San Mateo County has that permit, they permitted the riprap, and that they would handle that issue. And so this also goes to the county, so because they will need to address this issue at Montero Beach, and there are other areas where the county permitted riprap over 30 years ago, and it is in various stages of collapse. And we pointed this out in 2013. This is at the bottom of the access ramp at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and we got a sign put up. They put up a sign, but nothing else has happened. So the question is, you know, they need a plan. We need a plan for how this is going to be dealt with. So I had put in the agenda that we would approve a letter that would go to these various people, and I didn't do a letter. So this is what I'm proposing, that we approve a motion to just to approve this slide. This is the motion. Approve this slide presentation as documentation of MCC concerns about deteriorating coastal armoring with specific requests regarding coastal access improvements as part of the Coastal Commission consent agreement with La Costanera Restaurant. Any questions about the issues at hand? Public? Len,
So,
go up to the...
So the specific, Erickson from El Granada, the specific issue is the La Costanera agreement with the Coastal Commission. But your slideshow shows many instances of problems up and down the coast, so.
No, the slideshow only shows the Costanera except for the last slide. And that only relates to the question to the county, because they have said they will step up. They've told the Coastal Commission they will step up and enforce the riprap issue in some fashion at La Costanera. And so just as a final comment in this presentation, we have the same question about other areas.
It would seem that putting in any other pictures of other areas is an extension that is important, but part of a larger issue in those other areas. And
It's just in passing. We don't need to put much weight on it. It's just
I don't, it's just
something
that when you put pictures
something to
someplace,
start
it
thinking about.
raises that issue. That was a comment.
Okay. Anybody else? So, shall I make the motion?
I don't think you're allowed to, Mr. Chairman.
No.
I can if nobody else does.
I'm more than happy to make the motion if you have it.
All right, we have a
I will
second.
second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that unanimous? You look tired, Brandon.
Yes, I do. It's the longest, literally, this is the longest meeting I've been in.
No, You should attend one of our marathon meetings.
This ain't nothing.
You're spoiled.
We had one go almost 11 o'clock, almost as late as Half Moon Bay Radio.
So, the last item on the regular agenda is this letter, a follow-up letter to our previous one on the neighborhood commercial zoning. We had received a reply from Steve Monowitz, and basically saying the staff is too busy the next 2 years to undertake this effort. He said that the LCP policies and CEQA provide effective way to address MCC concerns on a case-by-case basis. Following that, there was a large turnout at Donuts with Don on April 4th. Many of whom seemed unsatisfied with this answer. So the letter for approval tonight, which is posted online and out there on the table, again makes the case for the zoning update and asks, at a minimum, a few specific updates in the near term. And those relate to building height, measurement method, side setbacks, lot coverage, and lighting, to at least bring them in line with the other commercial district in the Midcoast, the CCR. Anybody have any questions?
No, I thought it was an exceptional letter, and I would like to put on the table a motion to approve the letter as written.
Second.
Any other comments?
I'm happy with it.
Happy with it. Public comments? Thumbs up?
Public's happy with it.
Thank you. I know Chris isn't here. He's our design review guy, and I did check with him before he left town as to what approach he thought we should do at this point, and he agreed this was a good approach. He didn't see the letter, but, so, all in favor?
Aye.
6-0. Thank you. Now we're cooking. Okay, council activity. Anything to report?
Anything for me?
I got one item. Oh, did you say something?
Go ahead, I'll say something.
No, you go first. I don't want to get in trouble.
Well, the aforementioned Donuts with Don, you were there.
No, actually.
Chris and I were there,
Yes, Chris and you were there.
and you kind of summed it up.
Yeah, Chris reported back to me too. He said, well, whatever.
There was a good turnout. People had frank and open discussion with Don about possible zoning issues.
I guess I should say, I had an appointment with him at 11:30 to talk about some issues related to Pillar Ridge, and he was tired at that point and said, could we go to lunch? And I just have to say, I know there were comments on next door that he wasn't taking notes or something, and I just want to say, he remembered what people said, and he remembered what Carl said in particular, which somewhat comforting, and so, yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. He heard people.
There were also comments the next door implying that people had been thrown out of the meeting, which did not happen.
No, I mean, there was a group there, but then there were other people who had appointments, and there had to be time for them, so there will be other opportunities. So I did have something to,
I have another one.
oh, sorry.
I also attended the Farm Day lunch in Half Moon Bay, because agriculture is big in our territory. And all the awards went to women, which I thought was remarkable.
Really unusual.
But you could sort of see the spirit of the coast side. It was very impressive. Okay, now your turn.
No, my turn.
Oh, your turn.
What?
I just have a housekeeping item. if I may.
Housekeeping item.
Yes, this is a housekeeping item from the treasurer. The treasurer would like to remind everyone here that if you have an expenditure, please turn in your receipts pronto, because it creates a backup in problems, and you may not get reimbursed if they're too late. And secondly, I'm wondering about the request for copy paper.
Yeah, I just, maybe you guys, I don't know who decided they were gonna get the copy paper, we still do, and now we need it more than ever.
She's staring at you.
You were
It was
Dan.
probably me, and I
Okay.
did not follow through.
Okay,
So, what did we decide, a box of paper?
box of paper.
I will take care of it.
So my item is the Montero 7th Street Hotel. The pre-application workshop is expected sometime in mid-May. County staff is working on getting a meeting space. And now we have future agendas, so our next meeting is the county parks. And we're gonna talk about the FMR master plan progress report status of Midcoast Parks Development Fund, and assessment of goals, and a bunch of stuff to dial in on that. Sarah Berkman will be here, and maybe others. Shall we adjourn?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
shall.
we are adjourned,
Please.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Can you call?